forged on the gridiron in September. Perfected in the magic of March. For the fans who love the crunch of the pads, prefer a dunk, and expect nothing but the best. It's Bigger 10. Here's Steve Dace.
Greetings. Welcome to this week's episode of Bigger 10. Steve Dace here alongside my weekly co-host here on the program, Aaron McIntyre. Good to see you, brother. How's it feel to be a fan for another week of a top 5 team in the country? That's got to feel good, right?
Unexpected. That's how it feels. Was not expecting this, nor was really anybody heading into the season, but it feels pretty good.
Well, there's obviously a ton to talk about now with conference season. If you live in Champaign or Lincoln or fans of those teams or the team out there in Maryland, you've already experienced some conference play. But for just about everybody else, it's getting started in earnest here this week and next. So there's tons to talk about. Let's get to it with our Big 5 on Bigger 10. And let us begin with what happened at the Whiteout. And, you know, given our worldview, brother, we are suckers for a good redemption story, provided our favorite team, it didn't happen at their expense, right? Okay. But give it up to Sean Clifford. Now, he's earned a lot of the dogging. Sorry, bad pun there. The Clifford. Never mind. I just got fired. I'm not here all week. Don't try the veal. But he's earned a lot of that. I mean, his performance away from State College has been often less than inspiring, as is the case with Auburn quarterback Bo Nix. But he delivered, 28 out of 32. On a night his team couldn't even run for 100 yards. He picked the Nittany Lions up and carried them to a big win at the Whiteout against Auburn in prime time. So first of all, on just a human level, props to Sean Clifford for getting at least a little of that Steve Young proverbial monkey off his back, right? There's some other big games to go this season. He's got to, can he do that in Columbus, Ohio, for example? And looking at their defense, the answer might be, yeah. But for now, anyway, Sean Clifford exercised some demons, and now just behind your team in the AP poll, here comes Penn State.
Yeah, well done to Penn State. You mentioned last week, the splits for Bo Nix and Auburn on the road, especially against ranked opponents. Not especially good, but still, that was a heck of a fight that they put up in a very difficult environment, and kudos to Penn State for pulling through in that game, and as you mentioned, kudos to Sean Clifford as well. Deservedly, they have one of the best probably resumes in the country right now, definitely in the Big Ten, and I'm still unsure. I watched pretty good large chunks of that Penn State-Auburn game because I had money on Auburn. But I'm still not quite sure what their offensive identity is quite yet, but hey, the results are wins, so don't complain about that quite yet. It's pretty clear that they want to run the ball. As you mentioned, they were not able to do that. But fortunately, you've got some guys who can actually make plays and do just enough to win those games. Going into Madison the first day back with fans and then winning your first Whiteout, not letting that get to you either. Kind of some friendly fire there and letting the moment be too big. Those are some pretty big accomplishments for Sean Clifford and the Nittany Lions, so hats off to them so far.
Speaking of big accomplishments, Michigan State, if you had the over 4.5 season win total for Michigan State, now they haven't eclipsed it yet, but might I congratulate you on the winning ticket that you are holding, because they are off to a 3-0 start. They go down. I mean, the good news of the game is they didn't have to play Miami at night, which is really the only time their fans actually show up, right? The bad news was, though, that meant they had to play during the day when it was 179 degrees on the field. Didn't matter. They were the more athletic, but also more physical team. There you see them wrapping up Derek King. It looks like they have knocked him out for at least for the next few weeks from being the starting quarterback there for the Miami Hurricanes. They put up 38 points. They win by 21. And I keep watching Kenneth Walker. And I thought he was a nice addition from Wake Forest. You're talking about a guy that, as a part-time starter, had 17 career touchdowns. So there's some level of explosiveness there, right? But you watch that first game against Northwestern, very first play of the game, and you're like, wow, what a bad run fit by Northwestern. He just, looked like high school. Guy's just bigger and faster than everybody else, gets to the outside, outruns the angle, and it's I wouldn't want to be it, right? Here's the problem, though. At least it's a problem for me as a Michigan fan. This is the third week in a row I've watched Michigan State. I'm like, wow. Those defenders are taking some really bad angles. Yeah. Maybe it's not the defenders taking some bad angles here, if you know what I'm saying, Gene.
Yep.
Okay? So, do I expect Michigan State to finish 10-2 like the ESPN FPI is currently projecting? No. But do I think that they're destined for something better than 4-8 or the Pizza Bowl in Detroit? Yep. And if you look at what Mel Tucker has done there, it's kind of odd. Like this week, Cedric Irvin's kid, remember Cedric Irvin? Or you're probably a little young for him, but he was a great Michigan State tailback in the late 90s. He was pretty much the entire offense until Plaxico Burress came along. His son just committed to Notre Dame over Michigan State. That seems like weird timing. This would seem to be the time when your son would be like, yeah, you're right. You're right, Pops. They got the program back on track. Let's, keep the legacy going. So it hasn't parlayed itself yet into recruiting. But Mel Tucker, you can say this, the dude knows how to mine the transfer portal for sure. And I think there's a lot of teams maybe that were kind of chalking Michigan State up as that's one of the ones we're going to get this year.
Yep.
They ain't doing that now. So, the first week, okay, Northwestern had some bad run fits. 3 weeks in a row now, though, and it ain't like Miami, even if they don't have a great defense, is slow, right? Okay? 3 weeks in a row, the guy is making defenders look like they're taking bad angles. Maybe the rest of the Big Ten here ought to be like, respect this dude's speed because he is absolutely bringing it right now.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan State's strength of victory right now, or however you want to define that or measure that, not the greatest. But here's the thing, though. If this was, if they put on red and white and their name was Wisconsin and they had three wins that looked the way that they have so far, what would we be saying? Oh, that's a top 5. That's a top 10 Wisconsin team. That's just the same Wisconsin team that's won the Big Ten or showed up to the Big Ten championship game year in and year out, it seems. So I think we got to take our hats off to Michigan State and Mel Tucker right now. I mean, I've dogged on that coaching hire really ever since it happened.
You ain't alone, brother.
And I know a lot of people did as well. Both of us did to varying degrees over the last couple year and a half or so. So yeah, the strength of victory might not be great right now, but this is very unexpected. I would say this and Iowa being ranked in the top 5, probably number 1 and number 2 of most unexpected starts to the season so far, at least as it pertains to the Big Ten. And I think Sparty fans have a lot to be excited about because I didn't really hear a whole lot of buzz at all about Michigan State coming into this season and what they've been able to accomplish and do it 3 times in a row now, kind of the same way each time. That's pretty encouraging if you're over in East Lansing right now.
And by the way, and again, I say this as a Michigan fan, the 2 teams in the AP poll this week that are not ranked high enough, well, there's 3, BYU and Fresno State. I know Fresno State has a loss. It was at the end it was by a touchdown at Oregon. In my opinion, both those teams ought to be group of 5 teams ranked ahead of Cincinnati. And Michigan State should not be ranked 20th right now. Okay, that we're not ranking teams based on how good we thought they were going into the year or how good we think they're going to be at the end of the year. We're 3 weeks into the year. I mean, that's 25% of the season, right? So we're ranking teams based on what we've seen. There's no way they should be ranked 20th. No way. Let's talk, though, about what's going on in Columbus. So Ohio State quietly makes a defensive coordinator switch without making one. So Kerry Coombs is still officially the defensive coordinator. Reminder, handpicked by Ryan Day to replace Jeff Hafley when he left to become the head coach at Boston College. They replaced him with a guy named Matt Barnes, who was I think he was one of those unpaid analysts at Michigan when Jim Harbaugh first took over. So that's just a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. He called plays against Tulsa, not exactly known for having an electric defense even last year when Tulsa had a good team and was in the postseason. They were totally driven by their defense, including a linebacker that was a first-round pick by the Arizona Cardinals. That team put up over 500 yards of offense on Ohio State. Now they're saying it's a shoulder injury to C.J. Stroud. I'm sure it is some form of shoulder injury. There's a part of me that wonders, but is it the kind of injury that when a guy has a bad game and has already lost a game and you've got 4 other prep All-Americans behind him, you know where I'm going with this, right? Okay. Yep. You've got fans and media surrounding the team losing their damn minds. There's a crazy story on the internet that one of the major network fan sites for Ohio State was paying a player to get inside information, and then the program found out about it, and he either got kicked out of school or benched or something. I mean, these are all things Ryan Day has never had to face as a head coach, right? He got handed the keys to a Ferrari by Urban Meyer. And it was, frankly, a monster that wasn't even built by Urban Meyer. It was built by Woody Hayes 70 years ago, and it's just been updated, reiterated in various in iterations ever since. Now, Urban Meyer took it to its level. I think we would both agree on that. You're talking about the guy with the best coaching record in the history of the Big Ten Conference. But he was handed the keys to a Ferrari and said, hey, now it's all yours, kid. All right, full tank of gas. And he's been phenomenal with it, but these are challenges that he has not faced before as a head coach. And I'm reminded of what the great prophet Mike Tyson once said. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Ryan Day's program got punched in the mouth 2 weeks ago by Oregon. I was on him. That was one of the plays I made, one of the bets I made over the weekend. I thought they'd absolutely I thought Tulsa shot the wad against in-state rival Oklahoma State, catching Ohio State at the wrong time. I remembered the last time Ohio State, Bucknut Nation was like this when they lost that game to Spartan in 2015 at home. And Ezekiel Elliott's arguing with the program in public. You're not giving me the ball. We played them the next week in the game, Harbaugh's first version. I'm like, we're catching these guys at the perfect time. Yeah, they 50-burgered us or something on our own field, right? So I kind of thought that's what we see, Aaron. And if I'm an Ohio State fan, I'm almost more concerned about what I saw against Tulsa in response to Oregon than even the loss to Oregon. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and it's really odd that, at least to my eyes, what's going wrong with this team is starting up front on both sides of the ball. I wouldn't call them necessarily bad. They're just kind of flaccid on both the offensive and defensive line. They have their moments, yes, but most of the time it's just the consistency is not there. At least in the parts of the games that I've watched so far, and that's a huge concern, especially when you've got a quarterback who prior to this had not started a game behind that line for you. You've got to have some other areas to compensate. And really, at the end of the day, especially against Tulsa, and to probably a little lesser degree against Oregon, what we just saw there were Jimmies and Joes. There were very few X's and O's, which when Ryan Day has had this humming, it's been a combination of both, and they're very difficult to beat. Same thing with Urban Meyer as well. When they have their day, it's a combination of superior talent and superior coaching. And what we saw against Tulsa, and to a lesser extent against Oregon as well, it's just talent against coaching and a little bit of talent as well. And you see these really weird kind of dog fights that Ohio State is really not accustomed to playing in against those levels of competition. And so I agree. You throw in as well what we talked about and kind of hinted at a little bit before the season with NIL. And talking, I think it was Ryan Day talking about, we'll find a way to make this equitable for everybody. We're going to
spread the wealth. I'm going to go Bernie Sanders on my players, right? You and I talked about the time. I'm like, I bet that did not go over well in the locker room.
Yeah, so he's facing some issues on a lot of fronts here that he didn't maybe expect to face, and definitely, as you noted before, he hasn't had to face quite yet. The good news for Ohio State, again, as it always is with them, because they are a blue blood, they do have the superior talent most of the time.
Exactly.
11 out of 12 times on the field. So you're going to be in every single game. It's just you got to have guys, and you got to have a system, and you got to have the coaches in place to be able to get those guys to buy into the system so that the coaching comes through as well. Because at the end of the day, if your system is broken, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter the number, or the guys aren't buying into the system. It doesn't matter how much talent you throw out there, because you may be competitive every game. You're also going to be vulnerable every single game as well. So to me, though, it really starts up front on both sides. I have not really been super pleased. You've got to be able to hang your hat on something. And I thought maybe the second half against Tulsa, that defense, at least up front, will start to bow up, start to assert their will. That never really happened. They got a few sacks, but they really never did that consistently on Saturday. And so that's a huge cause of concern if you're Ryan Day in Ohio State. Now,
they did find something to hang their hat on with Travion Henderson, the top running back in the country.
But that's the Jimmies and Joes.
Yes.
That was basically him putting the team on his shoulder.
Yeah. Now, let me say this, though, as a Michigan fan again. It wasn't too long ago, 2018, they looked like a mess, remember. The Urban Meyer situation with Zach Smith, him being suspended for a few games, Ryan Day as an interim coach. Remember that year they escaped Penn State and a whiteout. Remember that year they almost lost to Nebraska at home, and that was considered Scott Frost's best win until his moral victory in Norman, Oklahoma last weekend. They should have lost to Maryland the week before they played us. All Maryland had to do was convert the 2-point conversion and didn't. And then they ended that year with they could have put up 70 on us. They put up 60. And then won the Rose Bowl, and Urban retired, and they still finished in the top 3 in the country. So, as the great prophet to Harvey Keitel once said in the movie Pulp Fiction, if you want somebody else other than the Buckeyes to win the Big Ten, don't start filleting each other quite yet. All right? Just warning you. So, let's get to a game 57 years in the making. Actually, it should have been 56, but we didn't have a chance to play this game last year. So it was played this year. Well, this is supposed to be the second of these 2 games. Last year got canceled. So this year, we didn't get Lambeau last year. We do get Soldier Field this year. Hard to believe, Wisconsin and Notre Dame have not played in 57 years since 1964. And especially given how good Wisconsin has been since the early 90s when Barry Alvarez reestablished the program. I mean, these are programs you would have thought would have, run up against each other in a postseason or something or anything along the line, at some point in time. Never did. And yet they're finally going to renew their acquaintances at Soldier Field Saturday. And they're going to do so with former Wisconsin quarterback Jack Cohn now piloting the Fighting Irish. And he's admitting publicly this is going to feel a little bit weird. Now, I don't know who this gives a bigger advantage to, obviously. He knows the Wisconsin defense quite well, but remember, he didn't play last year. He lost the starting nod to Graham Mertz and then opted out. So he hasn't played with these guys since 2018. On the other hand, he's got a different kind of cast around him at Notre Dame. Doesn't have as good as running backs, probably has better receivers than what he had at Wisconsin. So I don't know how many of those tendencies carry over for the Badgers, but this is the first of a gauntlet for the Irish this year. They have something like a half dozen games this year, Aaron, where the opponent is coming off a bye week, and this is the first one. So what do you think? Wisconsin about a touchdown favorite in this game.
Well, first of all, Notre Dame should fire whoever's scheduling their games. I mean, that's a little bit of an advantage. I will fully admit I have not really watched a Notre Dame game since the Florida State game. I think that was to open the year.
Yep, Labor Day night.
How did they look against Purdue?
I mean, Purdue looked kind of crummy. They couldn't run the ball at all. Kyron Williams, and Purdue's one of the worst run defenses in our league.
Yeah.
Kyron Williams sealed the game like a 50-yard touchdown run in the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. The other 29 carries in that game for Notre Dame produced a total of 92 yards. And again, that's against one of the weakest run defenses in our league.
Yikes. So, I don't know. Maybe the cone factor will lift that offense to be able to do something against the Wisconsin defense, which has looked like a Wisconsin defense through 2 games so far this year. But I would not. There's a lot of expectations for this game. I don't think it'll be a no contest, but I'm guessing Wisconsin is going to end up winning by around 2 scores, 10, 13 points, something like that. Hopefully it'll be entertaining, but I'm not super high on Notre Dame. They
got the issue you just mentioned with Ohio
Florida
State.
They escaped Toledo. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they did escape Toledo. Yeah,
and didn't look super impressive against Purdue. So at this point, at this juncture, it'll be fun to see. It'll be fun to see those uniforms thrown out there, but I don't think it's going to be much of a game.
They've got the same issue you mentioned with Ohio State. I mean, their line play the last few years has propelled them as a program, right? Brian Kelly's the first Notre Dame coach ever to have 4 straight 10 double-digit win seasons. But their line play so far in 3 games this year has been anything but stellar. Let's go to the final item in our Big 5 on Bigger 10 this week. And if there is a big conference showdown, it's probably 3-0 Michigan, unranked in the preseason, against 3-0 Rutgers, unranked in a lot of preseasons. In fact, Aaron, this is the first time that Rutgers has played in a game that has pitted teams 3-0 or better against one another. Are you ready for this? Since 2006. It has been 15 years, Aaron. What were you doing in 2006?
Let's see. I was 13, so I don't know. I was still probably picking boogers and playing Army out in the windbreak.
At 13?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was homeschooled.
That's not a great argument for homeschooling.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, but I say that as a kid. I homeschooled as kids, but hey, man, truth hurts. But now I'm totally distracted by the fact you're picking burgers at 13. But
I pick burgers now. You've seen that.
Indeed. But that's because we have to, not because we want to.
True.
But this is the biggest football game Rutgers has played in a long time. Now, when you look at their analytics, first of all, Greg Schiano's done a phenomenal job making them competent. But they have played one of the worst schedules so far in our league. Prior to playing FCS Delaware, and I just throw stats against FCS opponents away. I don't even factor them in my analytics at all. They were 118th in the country in total offense. And that was despite playing Temple and Syracuse, 2 teams that are outside the top 80 of the Sagarin ratings right now. So what he's largely done, even though they put up like the 60 against Temple, a lot of that was turnovers and special teams. That's what tells you, though, they're well coached, is defense and special teams, you can get better just based on want to and buy-in, right? Mm-hmm. Want to, hustle, and buy-in and passion. So he's already built a bit of a culture there. But I think a lot of this is really more about who you think Michigan is, because ESPN's analytics guy, Bill Connolly, he said this week that if he didn't weight in his numbers at all what his preseason data showed on these teams and just went by in-season analytics, that Michigan would actually be number 1.
Yep.
ESPN's FPI right now has Michigan favored in all of its remaining 10 games. That's right, Michigan only plays an 11-game schedule. In all of its remaining 10 games, except for its 50-50 at Penn State. Now, that's a hell of a turnaround for a team whose head coach was on everybody's most likely to be fired list, right? Okay. So, your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, Rutgers is going to get destroyed. I don't care how good they have improved on special. Wasn't it like 70-0 like back in 2016?
78-0.
78-0.
Yes,
Thank you.
in
Back
2016.
In 2016. Yes. It's not going to be that, but it's going to be a dismantling because, again, a theme maybe in this, Michigan right now is really, really solid on both sides of the line up front. The theme in this episode is line play. And I get that Rutgers has improved. I just don't think that they've improved nearly enough. Mm-hmm. And Michigan right now seems to have a lot of buy-in and want to on that team. And that's really, really important based on what you just said about what the offseason has been like. So that can be a really, really powerful factor to factor in here. So I don't want to say that it'll be a shutout, but I think it'll be fairly close based on the way Michigan has played to this point in the season. And Rutgers is still Rutgers, even though they're 3-0.
Hey, do you want to get an advantage over your sportsbook this football season? Then you need to download BetQl. It is the only app you're going to need to make smart bets because their best bets computer model, it scans over 350,000 unique bets per year to give you a best bet recommendation for every game, not just football, but across all major sports as well. And these models cover everything from spreads to over-unders, money line picks, player props, etc. Plus, they give you the sharp data so that you know how the pros that do this for a living, who are they backing as well, and you get the latest line movement, injury news, etc. So head to the App Store or Google Play Store right now to download BetQL. Now, if you want to do it online, old school, go to try.betql.co/10. Again, that's try.betql.co/10. But the easiest way, just download the BetQL app in the App Store or the Google Play Store and enter the discount code 10 at payment checkout for 25% off any of their subscription offerings. Again, enter the discount code 10 at payment checkout for 25% off any of their subscription offerings. When we come back, we will play our weekly game of Would You Rather right here on Bigger 10. All right, time to play our weekly game of Would You Rather right here on Bigger 10. Aaron, I begin by asking you, would you rather bet Michigan or Michigan State to win the Big Ten right now?
I think based on the aforementioned analytics so far, I would take actually Michigan at this point. Now, that's why they play the games, as we always say. But to this point, I'm a little bit more confident. I would be more confident in Michigan than Michigan State to win the Big Ten. This one is for you. Would you rather be holding a Buckeyes to win the East ticket or a Hawkeyes to win the West ticket?
You know what? I cannot believe I'm going to say this, but I think I'd rather be holding. In fact, I'm confident I would rather be holding a Hawkeyes to win the West ticket. It's not that I think Ohio State sucks or anything of that nature. I still think they're a top 10 team in the country. It's that I think that Penn State is better. Michigan is clearly better. Michigan State is clearly better. Maryland is better. Rutgers is better. Every team has a flaw. Last year, Ohio State's secondary was abysmal, and that's why they had the worst scoring defense in the history of the program. But they still did a good job against the run, and they could still pressure the quarterback. They're not really doing any of that right now. And it's the point that you made. There are some fatal flaws. Like if they were in the Big 12 or the Pac-12, I don't think it would be as, I should say that though, with them losing to Oregon, but week to week, I don't know that it would be a big issue, okay? Because of the amount of athleticism they would still test you with on the perimeter. But in this league, if you cannot stand up to the point of attack, I mean, you can have all those Frisbee catching dogs you want out on the outside. But if you can't stand up at the point of attack, possessions get limited.
Yep.
And you get forced into a mosh pit, you know what I'm saying? And it's like basketball. It's always easier to slow teams down than it is to speed them up, right? So Iowa, to me, I don't think I was kind of joking on our Twitter feed. Hey, Auburn fumbled the ball like they were playing Iowa there, okay? Yep. But the truth of the matter is, and you know this, you watch more Iowa football than I do.
It's how they win.
This is how they win.
Yep.
Every year when they're good, this is what it looks like. All right, we look at the stats and we're like, how the hell they do that? This is their thing. This is their jam. They're at home here, being 97th in the nation in yards per play or something. This is their happy place. And I don't think the other teams in the West have improved at the rate that the rest of the East is better than it was a year ago.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think a case in point about limited possessions, the Chiefs' offense, my Kansas City Chiefs' offense, amazing. They looked amazing the other night. But because their defense couldn't stop Lamar Jackson, it came down to one mistake.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what Ohio State...
Just the limited possessions. Yes, you have the advantage on the perimeter, but the limited possessions increases your margin for error because, when you throw the ball 30 yards downfield to Garrett Wilson, to Chris Olave, they can still drop it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
The wind can still take a ball. And that doesn't mean as much if you're getting 11, 12, if you're getting 12, 13, 14, 15 possessions. If you're getting 9, 10, or 11 possessions, then it means a lot more.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, for you, would you rather start Spencer Petras or Graham Mertz in a big game?
Spencer Petras. And that's not an endorsement necessarily of Spencer Petras in big games.
It's a fade of the other guy?
Yeah, it's just because I need Graham Mertz. I guess you could count the Michigan game last year maybe as a big game for Graham Mertz, but I need to see him do more in big spots. And, last year was always going to be considered a one-off. But so far through this year, the one big game that he's played in didn't really show up. The one big game that Spencer Petras has played in this year, he didn't show up for 3 quarters. He did for 1. And so that gives him the edge. That gives him the edge by 1 quarter in my book.
That's some phenomenal analysis. I loved that.
This final one is for you. Would you rather bet Michigan State -5 versus Nebraska this weekend, or bet Notre Dame, Wisconsin over 46.5?
This is a really tough question.
I love giving you these bet analysis questions that I know you would not probably bet either one.
Yeah, because that line to me, now it opened up at 3 in East Lansing, and then it got, because you and I were talking about this Monday, we're talking about like lines that stink. Like right when you read the line, you're like, somebody farted, okay? Because Michigan State right now is the toast of the town, and they've earned it. Nebraska's coming off its most inspiring moral victory. See, that is loss of the Scott Frost era yet. Yeah. And the opening line was 3, and it's a night game, and Michigan State's coming home, the conquering heroes and everything else, right? That just smacked to me of odds makers are like, please, we beg you to take Michigan State. Please, we're begging you to do that. Now the line's been bet up to 5. I don't want any. I think at this point I'm going to do a spite in my picks and have a spite pick on Nebraska, just because the line smells. All right. Notre Dame historically as an underdog is like one of the greatest trends in the history of betting. Okay. So if I had to choose either one of those, I'd probably choose Wisconsin and Notre Dame over, because I do think that this is a game that I could see. Wisconsin's up, say, like 28-14.
Yep.
And then there's a garbage time touchdown for Jack Cohn at the end. Yep. I could see, something like that. And that gets you the over. But I would not, and just that line to me with Michigan State and Nebraska, man, just, ooh, that smell, as Leonard Skinner once sang. Yes. All right. That'll do it for this week's Would You Rather. We're done, right? Yeah. Yep. Wanted to make sure. All right. So that means it's time to tell you about our friends over at DraftKings. It's a great start to the NFL season, and it's only getting better at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. DraftKings is offering another week of action by giving all new customers a can't-miss offer. Bet just $1 on any football game this week and receive $150 in free bets instantly, no matter what. All right, so download the DraftKings Sports app to take advantage of this great offer. And remember, you can also do same-game parlays that allow you to combine multiple bets for bigger payouts. All the things you want to do, they've got it at DraftKings right now. Use the promo code BIGGER10 to receive $150 in free bets instantly when you place a $1 bet on any football game. Again, that's promo code BIGGER10 to get $150 in free bets instantly from DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Now, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Gambling Disorder Helpline at 800-270-7117. 21 and older, Michigan only. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for all terms and conditions. This week's Twitter poll results, we asked you, and these were close, which team that was unranked in the preseason AP poll and is off to a surprising 3-0 start ends up with the best record this season. Michigan and Michigan State are neck and neck. Michigan barely pulled it out, 48.5 to 44.1. Maryland and Rutgers are way in the rear. Were you surprised it was that close, Aaron?
No. This shook out the way that I think it should have, and I would agree that the result is the same. It's interesting because all these teams, of course, are from the East Division, so they all have, from here on out, fairly similar schedules.
They play each other.
Yeah. So I think this shook out the way that it should have, and we'll have our answer when it's the battle for Paul Bunyan's axe, isn't it? Michigan versus Michigan State.
Yep.
So
the Paul Bunyan Trophy.
That's right.
Yes.
Axe is
Wisconsin and Minnesota.
Yeah,
yes.
So freaking confusing. There needs to be
too many Paul Bunyans, too little time.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
All right, that brings us to our feedback of the week from Mark Wood, who says, no way Iowa is better than Penn State. I had Iowa number 1 in our Bigger 10 power ratings this week and Penn State number 2. He disagrees, says, hey, Penn State's got wins at Wisconsin, home versus Auburn. You're showing your Iowa bias. That's okay. You'll come around. Now, this may be the first time in my entire career, Aaron, I've been accused of Iowa bias, okay? But I will say I did think long and hard, what's more impressive, winning at Wisconsin and then beating Auburn at home, or beating Indiana, and then beating Iowa State on the road. I still think the win over Iowa State, given game day there, in-state rivalry, is still a little bit more impressive than winning at Wisconsin, just because of the circumstance and what that game means for Iowa walking into that snake pit.
Yep.
But I did think long and hard about this. Despite his false claims of my Iowa bias I've never had, Mark does think, I agree that there is a legitimate case for your argument.
Yeah, when I saw that, I saw this as well before I even saw it in the rundown, and I was like, I kind of rolled my eyes at first not because I'm an Iowa fan, but because this seems like nitpicking, 6 of one, half dozen of the other type of thing. I don't care. Commenso festive. This is what makes.
You're okay with number 2?
I'm okay. No, I'm not okay with number 2. I'm just saying this is what makes football season and being a fan fun, is arguing about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin in relation to Bigger Ten power.
Hell no, the guy who's
ratings,
changing all these diapers right now is not okay with number 2. Yeah. I meant you're okay with being number 2. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not okay with that either. But whatever. Yeah, you can make it. I will admit.
You're okay with being second.
You can make a case. You can make a case for Penn State being number 1 right now. I do agree. Iowa has a slightly better resume. I mean, Auburn coming into that game wasn't super impressive, and they basically took you to the end of the game in your own house in a wideout. So, still a good win for you. Not quite as impressive, I don't think, as Iowa's resume so far.
Hey, once again, thank you to our sponsor, BetQL, the only app you're going to need to beat your sportsbook this fall. Find their information along with 25% off as a discount code in the description of this video, and also check out the special BetMGM offer in the description in order to receive a free year of BetQL and other sportsbook sign-up offers and bonuses. And remember that BetQL is the #1 app to compare betting odds and is a must-get if you want to beat your sportsbook this football season. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Bigger Ten. He's number 2. No, he's Aaron. I'm just kidding. We'll be back at it again next week. Until then, remember to like, rate, subscribe, share, 5-star review, whichever the case may be and applies, no matter how you access this each week, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, right here on YouTube, etc. Please help us to keep finding more and more Big Ten fans just like yourself. For Aaron McIntyre, almost said number 2 again, I'm Steve Dace. Follow us on Twitter at Bigger Ten, and we'll see you next week right here on Bigger Ten.